Okay, American Gothic episode 19. This one is Strangler. So this one is another like weird out of order one. And so I think it was number 22, but it goes here at 19 in order. So we open on Caleb at his father's grave. He's there on Merlin's urging, and he tells his father he forgives him, but like his heart obviously isn't really in that. Merlin says that she's worried he's going to become bitter and that kind of thing can kind of eat you up. And then the sheriff appears after Caleb leaves. He tries to attack her, and his powers aren't strong enough, and she's able to throw him around a little bit, and he's just not feeling chill about that. So he like calls up some kind of entity, and there's like lightning and wind and stuff. Very dramatic. After the credits, he's in his office, and he's called the Boston Strangler from beyond the grave. And yeah, he wants him to go after Merlin, and he suggests using Caleb as bait. They talk about how polite the Boston Strangler was when he was alive. So yeah, that's kind of how he was able to convince people over and over again to sort of let him get close enough to them to strangle them. So this guy's name is Albert DeSalvo. So he warns him to only go after Merlin, not anybody else in the town. And we learn that if the dead kill the dead, then they turn into antimatter. So Merlin would like cease to exist under this idea that, you know. So we get a couple of things that let us know that Caleb is being left alone a lot. Gale forgets to meet him and stuff like that. And we also immediately understand that DeSalvo won't be able to stick to just going after Merlin. He heads to Caleb's house, the boarding house. There's not really anyone around, and he's let in really easily with his sort of polite salesman persona, and he works on fixing the fridge, which wasn't really broken, but that's how he sort of gets in there. We learn that the sheriff is heading to a sheriff convention, which kind of amused me because I was like, what goes on at a sheriff's convention? And then I was kind of like, is that a real thing? Like, I don't know. I was just super curious as to whether he just wanted to be out of town when this stuff was happening. Maybe so that Ben being left in charge would kind of make people lose faith in him or something, you know, or whatever. But anyway, one of the nurses gets attacked by DeSalvo in her home that night. This character has like a funny accent. I'm not sure that it's really Boston. I don't know whether the actor based it on like the Boston accent or on the real DeSalvo's accent. Like, I'm not really sure what they were going for. But it's just kind of interesting. Yeah, so the next day when the body's found, we see a deputy called Floyd. He's in other episodes, but he doesn't get that much to do. But he's freaking out when the body's found because he can't get a hold of Sheriff Buck. Ben is kind of chill and methodical. And yeah, Gale corners Ben later back at the sheriff's office and asks if he's like gonna blame the victim and if the victim was raped. And Ben is like, look, you can't just come in here and expect an inside scoop just because you're sleeping with the sheriff. Like, maybe Sheriff Buck does things a certain way, but I don't. And she hits him in the face. So yeah, not very chill, Gale. The Strangler is back at Caleb's place. He asks Caleb about his sister and sort of asks him for advice and help contacting his own fictional sister who's dead. That's going to be his way to get Caleb to call on Merlin. Gale comes in and DeSalvo notices her. She immediately kind of is asks him if he's related to the Boston DeSalvo. So we know that with her crime journalism background, she sort of recognizes him. So it's pretty smart. She warns Caleb to be careful of strangers. But later, the Strangler just comes by her place, and when she won't let him in, she calls the police, and she gets to, like, all she gets out is someone's at the door, which I was like, that's such a nice little thing, you know? You know, there's little moments when a show just kind of like throws a little call back in there or whatever. But anyway, he's supernatural, so he just lets himself in, basically. He just appears next to her. She's able to kind of like kick his butt a little bit, but he has powers, so he's pretty much able to overpower her. It's just that Ben gets there and breaks down the door, and so the Strangler disappears. Gail can't explain how DeSalvo got in, but she does know that she's seen him before, and she mentions that he said he was the Boston Strangler. So, yeah. And there's a nice little moment as well where Floyd doesn't really believe Gail or thinks he's being dismissive. And Ben is like, no, what she says is what she says. Like, we're going to listen to her and not be disrespectful of people, especially women reporting a crime, which I was like, nice work, Ben. Merlin appears to Caleb. He's playing with an old radio, and she knows that something is coming and that there's danger, but she's not sure what. Gail calls Caleb, but she can't get through, so her and Ben head over, but it's empty there. She's super worried, but Ben's like, he's probably just at a friend's house. How many times have you heard, like, in true crime, like, podcasts and stuff, where, like, the law enforcement in, like, the 80s, 90s, 70s, like, these kind of eras, are just like, he's probably just run away. He's probably just at a friend's house. Anyway, basically the Strangler tricks him into going to the hospital, and he asks him to call Merlin. Caleb refuses, but she comes anyway, but now he knows that the Strangler is the enemy, so he tries to polite Merlin to death, and then he says, hey, they can team up and double cross the sheriff, but she won't work with him because he's not, like, on her side, like, as in good and evil, two sides of that coin. Because she gets away, he just kills another nurse. I like the way his character is built with two sides. Like, he's got this very, like, unassuming, polite manner, and then he'll just, like, kind of drop it. Like, it's kind of subtle, but, like, well done. Anyway, Caleb and Gail are together at the boarding house. He's worried and he's tired. But she says she'll stay there that night. I was kind of thinking this would be like such a good episode for Loris Holt to be, like, used in some way, but she's just, like, not there. Like, where would she be? She's running a boarding house, like, her home is her business. So I don't know, I guess it's only season 1. Maybe they had more plans for that character but the show got cancelled or something, so I'm not sure. But anyway, when he goes up to bed, a mysterious force in the room makes his collection of vintage tin wind-up toys come to life. And it just kind of made me laugh, because it's that super spooky thing that you see in horror movies a lot, like the Jack in the Box and the monkey with the little symbols and those kinds of toys. And I'm like, but what kind of 10-year-old kid in the 90s would have had those toys? But anyway, it does actually seem like the kind of creepy toys kids would have in Trinity. So, like, I'm not mad about it, but I just thought it was funny because you're watching it and you just, like, accept it. And then you're like, wait a second. Where would you even find, like, toys like that? Anyway, Caleb hides under the bed because someone comes to the door and is knocking. But then the Strangler, like, when he comes out from under the bed, the Strangler's, like, already inside, because he can move around like that because he's some kind of a vengeful spirit. So Caleb screams and calls for Gail, but she can't get in because the door's locked. So Merlin appears. So, like, his whole ploy worked. When she faces him, her powers don't really work that well on him this time. So she can't really fight him off, but she's hoping that by sacrificing herself, Caleb will be safe, or he'll be able to get away. Gail's trying to find keys to get in the room, but Caleb is able to use his powers that he used in, remember from the couple of episodes ago. He uses his powers to defeat DeSalvo, and then Merlin is confused because she's like, those powers, I think she thinks they come from, like, an evil source. So she's like, how are you able to use them to do something good? Which is kind of an interesting thing, because it's like, that's a good question. So yeah, Basically, that's kind of the end of the episode, really. Throughout this episode, Deputy Floyd isn't really super trusting in Ben's leadership, but his kind of attention to detail and his kind of, determination to do things the right way start to win him over. So that's nice. There's when Gale busts into the room at the end, there's an ash outline of the body of the Strangler on the wall, so that's kind of cool. And then the sheriff comes back. So when he walks in, Ben is in the middle of the sheriff's office, and he's doing good work, and he's directing people, and he's sort of chasing up any leads to the whole Strangler situation. And the sheriff's I just want everything back to normal, the weird way that he liked to run things. Apparently Buck got Sheriff of the Year, which he kind of pointedly points out to Ben to make some kind of point. I think he's a little bit jealous, maybe. But Ben got the real reward, which is the respect of Floyd and everybody else in town. So yeah, that's the Strangler episode. Kind of exciting. There's only a few episodes left. I feel like this show had so much potential just so much potential. It's just such a weird, not even that weird. I mean, I guess it's classic sort of Southern Gothic tropes and stuff, but there's so much you can do with that. So yeah, let's see where the last couple of episodes go, I guess.